Welcome to the exchange. Today, I'm talking with Fis Fraga, a computer scientist and Tana Ambassador who ended up reading the stars and wiring astrology into AI and personal knowledge systems. We'll dig into his time with Tiago Forte, the idea of presence over prep in an AI world, and how agents and coding tools are changing what's possible for knowledge work. We'll also talk about two things he's built in Tana: the intentional plan and review system, and an astrology-powered setup that serves as the backbone of his Astrology Wisdom Copilot and the cosmic PKM approach. All that ties into an upcoming live workshop he's teaching in partnership with Strategic Circles. Links and details for all of that are in the description. Let's jump in. Let's start out with what's your story about who you are professionally, personally, whatever you think is interesting.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, Nick, and that's a good place to start. So, professionally, I'm a master's in computer science. I'm working as a Tana Ambassador for the last 2.5 years, and I've been both creating digital products to help people become more mindful, more productive using Tana, and also coaching and consulting people to create their own custom systems. And during the past, I have found the idea of knowledge management and personal knowledge management very interesting for several different reasons, but always related to learning and personal growth and personal development, which also involves self-reflection and contemplating on ourselves and our stories. So it has always been very useful to me on that end, and I have managed to help other people on that path as well. And an important part of my trajectory of my learning path was having worked with Tiago Forte, both as a facilitator for his course, so essentially teaching his concepts in his cohort, and also as a manager for the Brazil segment of his business. So I helped him launch his book here in Brazil and to launch his course here in Brazil as well. So that was also very interesting. It has put me in contact with some amazing people here in my own country. So I'm basically combining that path of being an international, working with international people and spreading myself out into the world. And more recently, around 2 years ago, I started working with people here in Brazil as well. So that's an interesting combination there, to find a balance between those two.
That's quite the background. I didn't know that you actually worked with Tiago Forte like that. Was that really
Yeah.
kind of like a transformative experience for you in some way, or was it more like a natural stepping stone along the way?
Yeah. It feels more like a transformative experience for sure. It was something that I strived for. So I met him before taking his course here in Brazil once, and that was already a major conversation where I got to meet him before I started working with PKM and developing my own systems. So that put me into a very interesting perspective of guidance. And then I took his course as a student, and then a while after I managed to learn with him and his team on how to give that course, right, and teach the concept. So that was certainly very important for my trajectory as well. And then the most transformative part was when he traveled here to Brazil, and then we spent around 2 weeks together here in Rio and traveling to other cities here in Brazil to to work with different people and to go for interviews and so forth. So that was definitely a very transformative experience for me where I got to learn directly from him and share concepts, and in a way get to see myself through someone else's perspective and see how he respected me in a way that I didn't respect myself at the time. So it was very important on a self-confidence base, and on feeling confident within myself. So that was definitely a quite an experience there.
Very cool. Do you feel comfortable sharing one of those things that he saw in you, that he respected in you, that you hadn't before then?
Yes. One thing that came across was the way that he mentioned that he would work with people on a simple level, right? And he really praises being simple and teaching things in a simple way so that pretty much anyone could learn. And he really means anyone. So he would make PKM, or the second brain concept, available for anyone using the most basic tools. And then he mentioned that, oh, we could kind of find a partnership, or a way in which I would, and Tiago would get people on a more basic level. And then if people are interested in something more complex, then he could send them over to me, for example. And then that kind of shook me. It was like, oh, wow. Like, he really respects me in that sense, and my ability to handle complexity, and using Tana. At the time, I was already using Tana. I was already a Tana ambassador, and Tana is a more complex tool compared to the other ones on this category. And that made me stop and think, and in a way notice that he really respected me in that sense. And it took me to go back onto self-reflection mode, and then to notice things that I had in a way hidden, that I didn't notice on myself yet in that time.
Yeah, that's an excellent point that sometimes you don't notice or understand things about yourself until you're able to see yourself through other people's eyes.
Mhm.
In a related vein, sometimes when you're teaching something, you learn things that you didn't the first time around when you were learning it yourself. So when you were in that teaching or instruction role, is there anything that you learned through that experience at that time that you hadn't learned earlier? Any kind of aha moments like that?
Yeah, that is definitely a very important part of the process of teaching and being seen. And I could mention one or two, let's say, granular, like specific knowledge about PKM or about a second brain, but I believe I learned more about being able to teach. So the process of communicating, rather than a specific concept that I learned in more depth. And one thing that I think I can share that really struck me, and I used it today before jumping onto this call. So it's something that I really use on a regular basis, is the idea of presence over prep. So being present instead of being prepared, right? And being in the right mindset and physical state before jumping into a conversation, an interview, a lesson that you're going to give, instead of, or even an exam or a test that you're going to take, instead of being meticulously prepared, and being kind of worried until the last second, like, I'm not prepared, I need to study, I need to kind of write things down, right? So it's more about your state of presence than it is about how much you have prepared, because you are prepared, right? We have the knowledge in ourselves. It's just a matter of allowing it to flow through once we are in this dynamic.
So what is really when you boil things down, what's the benefit of focusing on presence over preparedness?
Yeah, I believe it has to do with allowing wisdom to flow through, because in a way, many people believe that we store information in our brain, literally. And I don't believe that the information is in our brain, right? I believe our brain is an antenna. It's a reception device that allows us to access information that lives who knows where. Well, it's not biologically wired inside our neurons, right? And then by being present, we are kind of opening that flow. And by being prepared, we're basically storing information in a sheet of paper or in a backup note, and then we are kind of getting information from that note or from that resource that we might have prepared, whilst being present is just letting go and just trusting that we are going to access the information using our brain, and it's going to be the right information is going to come through on the right moment, and in a way it's being in sync with this flow of ideas, of informations.
Cool. And you kind of learned that while you were teaching the second brain course, I assume. Is that when you kind of really inculcated this for yourself?
Yeah, it was a mix of both being present and teaching and feeling that, and also some of the study that I have been doing over the past years related to like physics and psychology and consciousness and even spirituality, which are themes that I'm highly interested in. And that understanding was also a part of this lesson to me. And so it's a mix of the actual experience and feeling it in my body, and also the conceptual understanding of what I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that our brain doesn't store information. So it's not a storage device, right? It's more of an antenna where we are capturing thoughts that come to us. We are accessing our memories, our past experiences, which are our memories, and then bringing them onto our current processing state. So I think it's a combination of all of those.
That is a very interesting twist. Uh, would it be a good metaphor to say that a lot of the mistakes that people sometimes are making is treating like a monitor for your computer and imagining that that's where all of the things are being stored, when really that's just kind of it's a method to bring all the information to the surface and for you to interact with it. Is that a good metaphor, or was there maybe something lacking there?
Yeah, I like the monitor is a good way to think about it, because it's just showing us information, right? It's not the actual computer. And yeah, I think an interesting way to look at it as well would be to think of the computer as having two parts, right? It's the processing device and it's the storage device. So both are in our computer. And then, for example, modern computers, they store information half on your device and then half on the cloud. And some computers are already only using the cloud, right? They're not even storing information on your device. So I think it's looking at our brain as the processing of the computer and not the memory. And then the memory, it's hard to to explain, but it's kind of spread across space time, right? And we are essentially remembering and bringing back those memories. They're not stored in our brain, right?
And you said that you were already using Tana when you were helping Tiago Forte out. And that's pretty early on in the existence of Tana. So I'm really curious about your Tana origin story. What got you interested? Why you made the leap? What is your origin story with Tana?
That is one of the favorite things that I like to talk about. And it to me it's a beautiful story. It has been an important part of my trajectory. And a little background before I jump into how I actually jumped into Tana. I was using Rome research for around 2 years, from 2021 and 2022. And then during that time, I was also working on my master's degree on computer science. So I was studying computer systems and coding and knowledge graphs and the software engineering. So it was a very powerful background to understand Tana. Little did I know that I would meet Tana someday. But so within that context, I was already interested in PKM. I was already using Rome, and I decided to write my thesis about knowledge connections using AI. So I've developed this system to get a set of readwise highlights and to create an interconnected knowledge base within those highlights. So with that, I would use the concept of a highlight, and then I would find the author of that highlight, and I would identify specific concepts within that highlight. And what these represent are categories. They are categories of knowledge. So that was in mid 2022. And then I wrapped up my thesis. I wrote it all out. At the time, I used Obsidian as the tool to represent and to navigate that. And then I swear, like 2 weeks after I finished and I presented my thesis, I was very active on Twitter at the time, and I saw that the PKM community was on an outburst because this new tool was being launched, and that was Tana. And I tried to get into the first wave, but because it was so close to my thesis, I was actually traveling. I kind of took a time off, and I missed the first set of invites to Tana. And then I only got kind of 3 weeks later, so maybe December 2022. And on that period, I was dreaming about using Tana because I saw that it was enabling the exact same concepts that I had been working with on my thesis. And I was so excited to test it out and to use these categories, which were the super tags, and which were equivalent to concepts on software engineering, which I had already studied as well. So I had all this background of computer science that made Tana look so interesting, but I couldn't use it yet. And then, of course, I got access to Tana, and I got in love with it so super fast. And because I had all of that background, I immediately understood what Tana was able to do and where it was guided towards. So, in that end of 2022, I wrote a thread in Twitter, which was my first viral uh, content over there, which got over 70,000 views over time. And I jumped from around like 200, 300 followers to like 700, 800 in a couple of weeks. And all of that explaining Tana. So that twist of moving from Rome to Tana was initially something that I was really excited about, but it was an experiment. And then with that interest from everyone around, that transition from 2022 to 2023, I made the decision to go all in Tana. So it was my plan, my objective for 2023 was really stepping into it. And because I saw how it was already preparing for the AI to join the party, let's say, we weren't expecting it to be that fast because GPT exploded on 23, right? But I was already prepared, right? I had taken my master's as 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 an anticipation for what was coming as well. So I knew this was important. I knew this was going to be a big deal. I didn't know when, but yeah, like with that, I saw Tana. It was like this perfect tool. It had all the features that I loved and that I understood. So I decided to go all in, both for my usage and as a professional tool, right, to help other people learn and get used to that as well.
Cool. That is an awesome origin story. And I sense like there's a lot of things that many people tell about their origin story, whether it's starting off with Rome or Obsidian, or it's like something about the architecture of Tana just aligns with how they see the world or how they connect the dots in their own minds. Like all of these things, very, very common threads that I see a lot. But I also like how you mentioned you were working on your master's with an eye to AI in the future, and Tana fit with that. But you were surprised at how quickly AI arrived. And like that's something that I experienced myself as well. Like I've been expecting this to happen for some time, something like this, but it's one of those things that you simultaneously believe is inevitable, but you don't think is ever going to happen because it never does happen. And then suddenly we're here. Are there any other surprises like that for you with the world that we're in with AI now, besides just the timing?
Interesting question. Um, yeah, I something that really got me by surprise this year as well was the coding agents and what's possible using something like Claude Code or Cursor. And that I think that brings us for people who are interested in knowledge management and in using knowledge, that is another another layer of potential of using these coding agents that have access to all of your notes and knowledge. So that's something that really surprised me this year. So I think we could say that in 2023, 2024, the biggest surprise was how GPT was growing and how it was usable as a chat, right? As an interface there where you are basically on a linear exploration of one message and then another one and then another one. So it's always linear, but it was already super powerful for the time. And then now in 2025, I see this explosion of agents and coding agents, and using that really surprised me this year, both on the coding level of what we can create as web pages, as apps, and so forth, but also on a knowledge level of being able to see an agent access any knowledge inside your workbase and pull from that information and then create a report or generate a landing page or some copy for that, and even generate new ideas or kind of piece together insights. And I see that as being super valuable for knowledge management and for working with our own knowledge, and not only for coding, right? For creating actual code. So in a way, it's the use case of using a coding agent for its capacity of analyzing knowledge and complex ideas and insights. So yeah, that really surprised me when I started to use it this year.
So yeah, that is super interesting, and I agree that it's not just the fact that we have coding agents and things like that, but how good they are, and they just keep getting better. And I'm wondering to the point that I'm not sure if we have ceilings on potential for these things. And I don't know what that means for the world if there are no ceilings. We're so used to there being ceilings for anything and everything. Um, and it makes me wonder what is possible that I previously considered impossible. Do you have any ideas of what some of those things might be in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years that we thought would be science fiction even a century from now, but maybe are going to be real?
Those are some speculative possibilities. And I really believe that we should not be thinking about limits right now, because indeed it is expanding very fast, and the abilities are getting bigger and stronger. So I think we're going to see some interesting things in the future, possibly so many autonomous agents and AI being able to contribute with knowledge work and with even physical work, both on like large scale. I saw the other day a port in China. Funny story. I worked at the port here in Rio of shipping containers for around like 8 months or so back in the day. And then I saw yesterday that China has the first port that doesn't have any single worker there. It's all AI. So like ships come in, and then the how do you say, the like those big equipments
The
come and get the
containers,
containers. Yeah. So but
mm,
the
the
actual
cranes.
equipments, the cranes,
Mm.
yes. So the cranes get the containers and then move them around. Everything completely AI powered. So that's a physical manifestation of how AI is already kind of taking over in the sense of work. And I believe that we could see some very big automation on a more knowledge work approach. And this would mean all sorts of different effects on economy and on mindsets and psychology of people who would need to adapt to a new role and a new way of seeing themselves within the productive workforce. And yeah, so I believe that it's going to bring lots of opportunities, lots of challenges, and we are in a way going to see a new world, a new way to operate, and a new human in a way, right? And we are going to see ourselves through a different lens, and we're going to face our maybe insecurities, and we're going to face shadows that we have to work with, and we are going to look at each other, I believe, in a way where we are going to see each other as other humans that are on a similar situation, and not focus that much on our own lives of kind of our work, because I need to make money and get a job and so forth, because those might be just optional. I don't know. Like, you don't need to work. You don't need to get a job, right? You just go be a human and have human relations and look at other people and worry about the environment and worry about like how humanity is developing in a way. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a mix of radical AI changes and technology advancements, and how that affects our human condition, and how we position ourselves and how we live our lives as humans. Yeah, certainly an interesting conversation to have.
Very interesting. I was hearing a couple themes in all of that. One of them was essentially infinite possibility space, and then another is what we previously have been taken for granted as foundational principles or assumptions that we can make. You cannot necessarily assume all of those are true or true in the same way anymore. So, like, possibility in both the positive and negative sense, and almost practically infinite. And in that kind of world, this segues, I think, very well to two things that you're working on. One is being able to plan what you're doing and understand what your goals are and being able to check in on those periodically. Would you like to talk about your product that I'm forgetting the name? I just remember it's planning and reviewing.
Yes. So it's the intentional plan and review system, and I believe it's going to help us stop and reflect on what's happening, right? Because with AI, things are already happening really fast, and they're going to keep accelerating even faster. And I like a quote by Ray Kurzweil that mentions that the rate of change is accelerating. So that means it's an exponential increase of speed of development. And what that means for us is that if we are not constantly taking note of what has happened both on the world and on our lives specifically, we are going to just be taken by the storm. And we're going to be on the eye of the hurricane, just swirling around with the world happening very, very, very fast. So I believe that the intentional plan and review system is using Tana's calendar, and that I believe is one of the most powerful features of Tana. It's simple, but it's super reliable, and it opens up many possibilities of seeing what has been created every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, and being able to review and access all of your notes, meetings, projects, products that you might have launched, and the invitation to stop. So after a week has finished, how many people look back and notice what has happened, right? Very few people really stop and notice and take note of what has happened. And same thing for the end of every month and of every quarter of every year. So what I believe this can help us as humans is to slow down in a way at the end of each transition so that we can move fast with AI every week or every month. But then as we transition from one month to the other, we actually stop to notice what has happened in my life during this month. And this allows us to ingrain that in our bodies and to acknowledge the progress that we have made, and even of what humanity has made, and new products that might have launched that were impactful in our lives. And this way we are speeding up, but we are speeding up and then we're slowing down to notice what has happened and to take it in, and then we can speed up again. And that way we are always taking a moment to notice what has happened, instead of just mindlessly spiraling upwards in a science fiction movie of eventually finding a situation that we don't enjoy, that we don't like to be in, right? So what these intentional reviews are about reflecting, is this good? It's like, am I going on the right direction, or would I like to change directions? And especially with AI being so powerful right now, many professions are going to be disrupted. And also, many people have the opportunity to use new technologies that weren't available 1 week ago or 1 month ago and pivot to a new situation in their lives. But that only happens if we stop and if we think. It might look simple, and it is simple to think, but it's super powerful. And it's something that many people don't take the time, especially a consistent time, to stop and to think and to analyze their lives and to project, okay, where do I want to go now? And that's what I really want to do with this intentional plan and review system. And it, as I said, uses Tana's calendar tags as an anchor, right? So after every month, you're going to receive a kind of a reminder that, like, look, October is over. You can review October now, and of course plan November as a natural progression forward. So yeah, I think that's where I'm headed.
Very powerful, and it makes so much sense. If you're watching this now and you want to check it out, link's going to be in the description. I think one of the key aspects is the intentional part, because you can plan and review all you want, but there has to be some intention there. Would you like to dig into that a little bit?
Yes, that's a very good question. And it's a very important part of the naming and of the experience in general. And I think there are two ways to practice this intention. One of them is periodically, which is the sheer fact of stopping and reviewing a week or a month. That is already intentional. And that's already going against the current of the vast majority of people who are just looking forwards towards the next paycheck or towards the next situation that they're going to face. So that's an important part, just being intentional about taking the time and really stopping to review and to plan forward. You can pivot or you can just continue with your flow, but you're being intentional about continuing on the path that you are going, right? You're not mindlessly following that same path. And then there's the other part, which is more like a one-time exercise of being intentional and connecting to your vision, to your purpose, and taking this time to envision where you want to be. I'm using a couple of different concepts from different places that I've found. So one of them is the favorite problems. It's originally connected to Richard Feynman, because he mentioned that we should have a list of favorite problems that kind of guide our life, such that we can connect new information that comes in to these problems. And this is a good way to start to see your vision of what am I interested in the world. And those problems could be personal, they could be more world level problems. But then using those problems, one thing that I've seen being used is what Stephen Kotler, which is a researcher on flow and human performance, he talks about massively transformative purposes. That's an MTP, and it's, as the name suggests, something massive that can bring transformation both to you and to the world. And it's a purpose, right? It's something you're striving towards, and it's supposed to give you excitement and to give you motivation towards something that's really meaningful to you. So your favorite problems show you your curiosity, what you want to think about and what you want to work towards. And then if you combine those, you can find something that can be a purpose, right? It can be something that's really going to transform your life. And many people never get to that level of expectation towards the future. And having something you strive towards is a very important component for our human life. There is this famous author, which is Viktor Frankl. He was a survivor from the Holocaust. And he mentioned that everyone who survived, and he was there during the period, they all had something they were looking forward in the future. And people that didn't have something they were looking forward in the future, they would just succumb to any like life threatening situation, right? But the ones that did have a purpose, the ones that did have something they were working towards in the future, they were able to survive, and they were able to endure any challenge. So that's the power of having something that you're looking forward to. So being intentional in a way also involves seeking your vision, seeking your purpose, and in connecting towards that purpose. So that's a snippet of what's going to be, what is available in the system, and what can help people to be more productive and to live in more alignment towards where they want to to get in life.
Quick pause to connect this conversation to a few things. First, if you feel the pace of AI sweeping you away, take a look at Fis's intentional plan and review system. Second, Fis has an Astrology Wisdom Copilot and a cosmic PKM solution built for Tana. You'll find more information on both of those below. And if you want a supportive structure to help you incorporate this kind of product into your own professional setup, that's what we're doing in Strategic Studio, the middle tier of my community. The studio is for people who want to design and run their own AI ecosystem. Tana, definitely, but also tools like N8N, agentic browsers, and other tech that lets you connect everything without having to become a full-time builder yourself. Studio members get access to every live workshop that we run, plus the full replay and the entire course library, including Simon's recent Nano Banana Inside Tana workshop on achieving brand-faithful image generation results, and a 2.5-hour N8N plus Tana course where we walk you through building an AI ecosystem for your business, including an agentic email responder with branching decision paths and Tana integration for both inputs and outputs. Studio members get all of that included. If you're not a member, you can still grab a ticket for Fis's upcoming Cosmic PKM workshop separately. All right, back to the interview. Yeah, I love how you are directing people to do two counterintuitive things and one super important thing. The counterintuitive things are in this world where technology and just the world is moving faster and faster. The acceleration is even speeding up increasingly. The inclination people have is to try to catch up, try to just move faster and faster yourselves, never stopping. And you're encouraging people to occasionally stop because we are humans. We are not AI ourselves. We need to have perspective and be able to look around once in a while. The other counterintuitive thing you're encouraging people to do is to look backwards. You want to move forwards, but sometimes in order to know where you need to be pointing into the future, you need to understand and look backwards. I love both of those. And then the super important thing that you're encouraging people to do is to understand themselves and find their purpose. And one of the ways that you're doing that is with your other product that you're currently working on right now. And it deals with astrological wisdom. I'd like to talk about that now. You want to kind of give a little intro to people?
Yes, and I really loved how you have framed all of this because you've touched on the essence of this, which is this counterintuitive movement of knowing that we are moving towards the future. In that sense, we are moving forwards, but acknowledging that there is a lot of value of looking backwards. And this happens on a short scale, which would be our months and our quarters. But this has also a lot of value on an even larger scale. So what I'm seeking with this Astrology Wisdom Copilot is to leverage the technology and all of the wonderful possibilities that are now available with AI and with highly advanced computing systems, and looking backwards to 5,000 years ago, where the ancient Sumerians and the kings of those times would live and swear by the wisdom of the stars and the astrology at the time. And how can we use this wisdom that has been carried for thousands of years in our human existence, because it's being used in several different periods of the past, and combine that, which some might call a forgotten wisdom, which, while some others have been using it ever since, so they haven't forgotten about it. But how can we bridge those two, right? How can we bridge this modern technology, which would kind of resemble the future, with this ancient wisdom, which we have carried from the past in this present moment? Then I believe there is huge opportunities here to use the complexity that AI can handle and to bring in both the general wisdom about astrology into Tana, and also our personal information, which would be our natal chart, the chart of skies in the exact moment and place when, where, and when we were born, and use AI to analyze those informations and to give us insights that are actually really deep. And I have been using this system that I have been developing over the past 3 months, 3 or 4 months. And I have had experiences where I was really touched by the insights that AI was able to give me in a way that I felt really, really seen by inner desires and by characteristics that I have, and how that connects to what I'm considering as this purpose, as where I'm moving towards, in a way that I noticed there's something super interesting here, where we can use this intelligence that I'm not sure it's artificial whatsoever. It could be simply a digital intelligence, right? Because intelligence itself is an inherent characteristic of the universe where we live in. So calling any form of intelligence artificial is kind of removing the connection to the source of that intelligence. So using that intelligence to look at our lives and providing, as you have always also been working with, context, right? The importance of context in Tana with your system of GigaBrain, and bringing in information from several different parts of Tana and parts of your life. So this idea of the Astrology Copilot is to add in another layer of information, which is coming from your natal chart, your design when we came into life, into this life, right? And combining those with the powerful AI that we have available right now.
Cool. Do you have any, like you had some powerful moments, you said. Can you share any of those examples, or do you have any thing that you can demonstrate for the people watching at home?
Yes, yes. I can mention one key insight that I took from these interactions, and how this insight within itself was a powerful push for me to actually come public with the system that I have been building. And it was related to my, my purpose in life, and kind of what I was designed to work with. So by analyzing several different placements in my own natal chart, so that could be my sun, could be where Mars is at, or where Venus is at. So I created two different commands. So one would look at that placement individually, and one would look at that placement holistically. So looking at all the aspects of the chart, and contextualizing this specific placement with regards to all of the other ones. So using this holistic analysis, I've seen repeatedly across like several different occurrences, the same theme come up again and again and again, which was my urge to work with spirituality, and to explore both my own spirituality, and to bring this and express this in an outer facing manner. And this has been something that I like secretly wanted to do for several years, and that I was exploring in my private life for several years. And by using this system and seeing how often I was pointed again and again to actually working with this and making this something greater in my life, I processed that, and I made the decision to actually combine my personal interest, which was behind the scenes, in spirituality and in studying the mystic studies over several years with my technical and my professional life of working with AI systems and having a master's in computer science and working with Tana as an ambassador. And it just occurred to me that those two can and should coexist in my life, right? I shouldn't have to split my personal interest and my professional life. And that was a very important trigger moment for me, because that gave me the courage to actually go forward with that and to show that to more people and to actually make this available as a product. And yeah, that was an insight. And I would be happy to give a quick overview, quick demonstration of how it's structured and what's possible using the system as well.
Yes, I'm very curious.
Yeah. So let's share my screen and see what we can show here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Wait, I'm going to move the camera, the video over. So this is a list of elements here. So this would be the first part that I've mentioned, which is related to general wisdom about astrology. Whereas this other tab here would be related to your specific profile and your specific information. And this is an example profile that I've put together for this demonstration. So I'm going to quickly start by showing how this looks like in Tana and how Tana is so powerful to represent specific wisdom about pretty much anything. And especially when you want to show the connections between the different wisdom. And in this case, I'm showing all the planets and other astrological points which exist in astrology. And here in the side, you can also see the zodiac signs. So I'm going to open up one of these to show what we can do here in Tana. So you can see that now I have zoomed into the planet of the moon. And here we can see different pieces of information about this specific. It's considered a planet in astrology. Of course, it's an asteroid that's going around the Earth, but it's an important part of our chart. And here we can understand what is the function, the meaning of it. So it's related to our emotional body, to our unconscious patterns, has to do with ancestral memory, connects us to our mother, right? The moon represents the feminine. And here's a very good overview of how we can connect different components here in Tana, because I can use fields to connect this planet of the moon to the sign which is ruled by the moon, which is Cancer in this case. And here on the related content sections, you can see that we can see different objects in Tana, which are probably here in this list, that connect back to the moon. So here we can see dignities, which are essentially places in which the moon is either stronger or weaker, which is in domicile or in exaltation, which are make it stronger, and in detriment or in exile, which makes it weaker. And then from here we can navigate, right? So if you click on a specific node, you can go to another component that is going to be again organized here in Tana with its connections to other pieces of information. So in this case, this is Cancer. This is a water sign. It's one of the 12 signs in the zodiac. Here we can see an image that was generated by AI. There's the star, the constellation of Cancer, and more information about this sign over here, such as the date, the order in the zodiac, the element that is connected to it, which is the water. And then again, more information here on the right. So this becomes this knowledge base that you can explore and dive deeper into. So if I click here, I can again navigate into Scorpio. So now I am on a different sign. And here I would like to quickly show this command of explain this. So if I click this, I'm going to get all of this information about Scorpio, and we're going to start a tutor chat. And the chat is here on the right. So I'm going to close that middle one. And then here we can essentially chat with AI to understand what does this mean. So what does Scorpio sign mean? And here we're going to see the clear definition and meaning, a mythological background, alchemical correspondences, how it functions in the natal chart. So we can explore these and understand more about each specific element and component. So here you could do this for a sign, as we just did. You could do this for a planet, for houses, aspects, and pretty much any of the astrological components here. So this is an interesting way of looking at general concepts of astrology. And then the other part that I would like to quickly touch upon is how to see how this connects to your specific chart and to your life. So if we scroll down a little bit, here in the bottom, we can see the placements for this specific sign. And in this case, this belongs to my profile, which here is an example profile, but we can see what are some of the planets that we have in this sign of Scorpio. So here I could click on the North Node. The North Node in astrology represents where you are going towards in this lifetime. So it corresponds to your purpose in a way. And here you could expand this planet of the North Node to understand more about what this means in general. And this is going to be similar to what we have seen for the moon. And here we can see the archetype, the function and meaning. So it corresponds to the growth direction in this lifetime. And then we could see how this behaves in our individual chart. So here we can see the zodiac sign, the house, where it is in, which is another important concept in astrology. And we can also see specific aspects to other points in our chart. So here in this example, we can see that there's a conjunction of this North Node with Pluto. And it has a small orb, which means that it's close to one another. And then we could open this up, for example, on the sidebar and then dive deeper into these aspects as well. But what I would like to show to wrap up this quick demo is how we can add these interpretations, which is going to run these two commands that are going to show an individual placement interpretation for what does this mean in my chart, and then the holistic interpretation, which was the one I mentioned that was super insightful to me. And then these are Ask AI commands. So these are one-time prompts that we're going to run in Tana, and these are going to use the background information for this placement. And then from here, we are going to get first the individual analysis. Let me close this to make it easier. And we could read this, but it's connected to this transformation, which is the Scorpio aspect, and the intimate partnerships or one-to-one relationships, which comes from this seventh house in this case. So I could go deeper and read more, but I just want to give this quick overview. And then here in the holistic analysis, as I mentioned, we get to see how this placement specifically connects to all the other components in our chart. So here it's going to reference other planets and other placements, such as Pluto, which is in conjunction with this North Node, and again, some other information about the chart here. And then by reading this, if if it's someone else that you don't know about, this is going to be, let's say, hard to understand. But when it's yourself, when it's your life, or when it's a family member, which you can also add here in the system, it's going to make sense. It's really going to make sense, because these are arch- archetypal energies that we have in our lives, and they are showing up, and they're always going to show up in different ways for every person. And this is why it's so important to use that context that you have experience with and you have worked with on your products as well. And so the context, which is also available here inside Tana.
So it does pull in information from you, and it is able to personalize this extreme wealth of knowledge and contextualize it to your information, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you can add in context here. If I go back onto the, for example, that's just this general information here. There's a super tag for personal context. So here I can add information. I can choose the profile, and whatever I add here, say I am a Tana Ambassador and work with AI and self-knowledge. This is going to show up in my profile, and it's going to be used with the prompts and with the chats that work with this system as well. So yeah, this
Great.
was quick overview here. Gonna stop
Thank
sharing,
you.
and that was a quick insight into some of the main features here. Um, but yeah, there's even more and even more ways to go deeper with solar returns, for example, which is every birthday that we make and what the year ahead can bring us, and to go deeper into that and how that connects to our natal chart, and some further information there.
Awesome. And yeah, this is currently in development, but there's going to be a link below for anyone interested in checking it out. You can learn more at that link.
Yes.
So I want to get just a little controversial now, and like I want to kind of dive into the fact that you seem to be a walking contradiction, because you have this master's of computer science and you are clearly very intelligent and academic, but then you're also in this space that most people would consider in the same category as voodoo, I would say, and very spiritually grounded. And I imagine this is probably part of the reason why you had this internal struggle of showing this work publicly. That it can appear that you are kind of like being a traitor to science, or something along those lines. What are your thoughts on that? Am I on the right path with that kind of that internal struggle that you were feeling, or just let me know where I'm on or off about that?
You are so spot on, and this has been a huge source of dissonance internally, and something that I have been working with over, as I said, several years, where I have been studying the technological aspects of life and understanding all the digital components, and having a master's and studying science, and this spiritual world, which is oftentimes frowned upon or is not considered academic because it doesn't have the entire validity of science. And that has been a major source of internal contradiction, to the point where I kept those two really separate for a long time, until I had I would say, the confidence in my own understanding of reality and of my life, to come to the point where I'm comfortable of saying publicly that I highly believe in both of them, and I believe both of them can coexist within the same product or the same ecosystem, and that I can teach people from the spiritual community how to be more in touch with technology and how to leverage technology for their lives, and vice versa, and teach people from the technological community how to soften a little bit and to get more in contact with the spiritual world, which I believe to be highly real and very present in our lives. And one thing that I think helped me a lot during this process was that I was a strong atheist on the past, around 7, 8 years ago. And I was that science guy. I was super strong on my convictions and on my skepticism. But by studying physics, that was when I started to become connected to spirituality. So I didn't have any mystical experience that kind of was a big breakthrough. I didn't see any spirits. I didn't communicate with anything. I didn't have a download. It was just this gradual studying of several different books and reading about physics and unified physics theory and holographic universe, and how, in a way, the physics does explain several of the spiritual phenomenon, and that quantum physics, quantum mechanics, is the attempt at explaining what many people consider to be the spiritual world and how the spiritual influences the physical, right? Through non-locality and through several other concepts in quantum physics that many people in the spiritual community use, right? So there was a bridge between those worlds long ago, and then long ago we decided to split those two up into different paths so that people wouldn't consider the spiritual world and spirituality to be a science, and so that science people wouldn't study the spiritual world. And I do believe that now we're reaching a moment in our evolution of humanity where we are getting back to that moment before those two split paths, where scientific community is starting to study the spiritual manifestations and effects of our reality. And I do believe there's a lot to uncover there.
That is super interesting. And one of the things that I think I'm coming to realize is that as AI, both on its own, but also by enabling humans, uncovers more and more and more of the material realm, there's probably going to be a lot of people who increasingly start asking questions of, but what else is there? What else can I uncover? What other questions can I ask? Which inevitably, if it's not material related, then by definition, I think it's spiritual. So, yeah, this could be part of a broader trend. And I think that I would encourage people that even if you don't believe in spirituality at all, things don't have to be literally true for them to carry metaphorical truth that helps you understand the world better. I don't want to limit people to only thinking of it that way in a very utilitarian aspect, but I would like to kind of frame it in that way for anyone who is super skeptical that it's okay to try things, I guess. As we kind of wrap up here, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share in, these last minutes here?
Yes. And I really appreciate that way of looking at things, of being open and loosening the skepticism to experimenting. I think that experimenting and trying things has no potential of harming us and can have a huge impact in opening our awareness and our experiences to new and powerful experiences and transformations. And I would like to wrap up with a comment, which I believe connects very well with everything we've been speaking about today. And that is exactly connected to how AI development is happening and how many people are going to start questioning other aspects that go beyond our physical reality, and how just the simple existence of AI as it is and the radical speed in which things are happening, this has two potential paths, let's say. This is happening very fast, which means it has lots of power within it. And we could believe that this is happening without control, and that this is happening in a catastrophic manner and catastrophic direction. And there are several authors who warn us about this potential, and there are several people who believe this is the current path we are walking towards. I believe on the other direction, which is that we are seeing all of this rapid technological advancements in a sense where this is undistinguishable. It's inseparable from the spiritual development that humanity is going through as well. So what I mean by this is that we are only seeing such an advancement in AI capabilities, and we are receiving this power because we are ready. We are spiritually ready as a society to use this and to see this actually impact the world in a beneficial way, in a way where we are going to see harmony and constructive and collaboration with all of this that's being created and given to humanity. Right, we're being able to use these technologies because we are ready, because we are going through this global awakening and elevation of consciousness, where we are going to use this for good. And of course, many people are going to use and are already using AI for bad reasons, but it's that scale, right? If more people use it for good and with love, then it's going to do more good things to the world than harm. So I believe that is my final thought around everything we've been talking about today.
I really enjoyed this conversation with Fis, where we were able to look at how someone with a master's in computer science and a really strong skeptic streak ends up building things that blend AI, Tana, and astrology, and why that isn't as contradictory as it sounds at first glance in a world where the ceiling on AI maybe doesn't exist. We talked about presence over prep as a real skill when tools can generate almost anything for you, and why you still need structures that force you to stop, review, and reconnect with what you're actually doing and why. And if you want to start with something concrete, check out the Intentional Plan and Review System, links in the description. And if you're curious about the cosmic side, check out the links for the Astrology Wisdom Copilot and the Cosmic PKM Workshop, which is hosted by my community, Strategic Circles. And if you're in Strategic Studio, you get access to that live session and the replay automatically along with the rest of the library. And not just for Tana, but the broader AI ecosystem, lessons, training, and information about N8N, agentic browsers, and other tools that let you plug everything together, whether you're a builder or you just want to know how to use what builders create. If you're not a studio member, you can still pick up a standalone ticket for Fis's workshop by going to the link below. Huge thanks to Fis for bringing both sides of himself to this conversation. If this gave you something to think about, feel free to share it with someone who's trying to find their footing in this new world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.